Welcome back. It's 12:37, and we are honored to be in the presence of Dr. Peter Baofu. What have brought you to St. Kitts? You're quite an accomplished world travel gentleman, and you're here with us for a few short days, as I understand it. So what initially would have brought you to St. Kitts?
Just quickly, that's because of my ethnographic research on humanity, and I have the intention to go around the world with no exception, every single country, including the small countries like yours, because I want to understand humanity in its totality, not just focusing on the major powers, the most famous one. I also go to the ones which are totally ignored, unheard of for many people. If you go to America, go to many other countries, if you mention the name St. Kitts, people say, where is that?
That is true.
What is that? Is that the name of a company, or what are you talking about?
Or is it part of Jamaica?
Yeah, part of Jamaica, something like that. So are you a Catholic? Yes. St. Peter or what? So that is exactly my point, because I want to provide some solution to global problems. Remember, I'm American visionary, and as a visionary, I want to predict the future and provide solution to global problems for the farther future. And for your solution to be realistic, you must understand totality of the humanity, not just a single most influential powers on earth.
Okay. Let's look at St. Kitts and the wider Caribbean, a region coming out of slavery, thus emancipation, independence, and trying to develop. We have not been able to do so as one people. Even though our treaty is the same, we have, as an independent nation, a few of us still have the British monarchy as a sovereign. Example, King Charles. In Barbados recently, they changed that. So Barbados is now a republic. They have their own sovereign. But St. Kitts, a number of smaller countries still have the British monarchy as our sovereign. That speaks to a mindset, our psyche, because we, coming out of emancipation, we were given a curriculum, a Eurocentric educational curriculum. So we tend to look towards Great Britain still as our savior, even though we claim to be independent. On the flip side of that, because of the strong influence of American policy on the region, we gravitate towards America quite a bit. We see America as a beacon of hope to some extent. We understand the complexities that it represents for people, but we still gravitate to America, to Europe, and we distance ourselves from Africa. If you can shed some light on that mindset, what causes that, and how we can change that mindset, I think that would be interesting to hear your perspective on.
Yeah, that's a very good question, but the question is quite complicated, because you are not just talking about economic issue, but also political issue and cultural issue, for example. Let's talk about them one by one, because otherwise we're going to mess up all of them together. Let's start from the first one that you just started, the conversation about the colonial history, the cultural issue first, and then we'll go into the economic, the political, and all that. The problem that you are facing is not unique, because I have been in more than 151 countries by now on Earth. I also live in Africa. I have lived there for many years now. I have been more than maybe 30 or 35 different African countries already.
I've only been to one.
Yeah. And I have been also in the Caribbean. By now, it have been probably 8 or 9 or 10 already. And I'm still doing that in Latin America, for example. So this is the same problem facing almost every single Black communities around the world, not just in Africa, not just in St. Kitts. I have been interviewed about this in Africa. I have been on TV in Africa quite a lot. And people ask me the same question. And here is my answer. And recently, I also have written an article of Black Americans in America too, facing the same issue that you are facing. Many of the cultural values and beliefs have been imposed on you. Look at Black Americans as a contrast. Black Americans cannot even speak any of the African languages. They speak only English. They don't know anything about African values and beliefs. What they have, their political belief in many ways is
Anglo-Saxon?
American modern tradition. They know nothing about the Africans, Black African heritage. Okay? If you think about many other things that they are doing, they call themselves African Americans, but they have no Africanness in their African American identity. The same problem was over here. Many of this identity has been imposed on you. That means that you have a colonial identity even after independence. Your neighbor Barbados is a good example. I was there before I came here. And the lady, I think that she's very interesting prime minister. And
yes.
I remember that I watched her presentation the other day, and she said something like this. She said that we are small, but size does not matter here. What he means, size does matter, by the way, but what she means by that is that size does not stop me from speaking out. Small size does not stop me from saying that the colonial powers have to pay reparations. Size does not stop me from saying that we want to have a new identity. Size does not stop me from saying that the international order is not fair. So I think that she's quite courageous for her to and
very respected as a result.
Yes.
Because many of other leaders do not take that position.
But some people are afraid to speak out because when you speak out, you have to face the consequences.
Repercussions.
You could be overthrown. The opposition can be supported and come here and take you over.
As is a common American policy.
Well, look at Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Every country on earth, small powers have a difficult choice to make. The same thing about the war in Ukraine right now. Ukraine has a terrible choice to make, and they pick a choice. But when you pick a choice like this, you pick a fight with one side against the other side. The other side is come over here and trash you. But if you go to the other side, this side will come. So my point over here is that small powers, you have to play carefully, because if you make the wrong decision, you will be gone in no time. So I cannot tell you what to do, but I'm just saying that you have a colonial legacy which you had not yet decolonized. Independence does not mean decolonization. Independence often means that you are breathing a new form of colonial identity that's called neo-colonial identity.
That is correct.
The identity that we have is still a colonial identity, as you just said. Your king is King Charles III. He's a British, he's an Englishman, but he's your king. He's your former colonial master, but you consider him as your king. That is to show that you have no liberated identity. The identity is not yours. It's still a slave master identity that you are adopting. How can you free from that? I also noticed that many people over here, they have some of the complex that Africans have in Africa. Inferiority complex.
Identity? Yes.
No, inferiority complex.
Yes.
Now, you want to get rid of that? First, you must get rid of your colonial legacy, which you have not. Barbados take a brave step
in that direction.
Toward that direction. In the sense, I think the lady that's why he get a lot of attention and respect. But by the way, there's also a high risk because he's facing a lot of pressure from outside powers to stop it. They will go after you, by the way. They will not let you continue to do something like that. International politics is a question of power. When I have the power, I ask you to do something. If you don't, I will do something to get rid of you. Like it or not. Small
There's a
powers.
history of that. You're correct. There's a history of that.
Yeah, so small powers, you have to play that smart. Remember, once you make the false move, they will come and take you. with the opportunity. They will use whatever excuses. Economic, political, military, diplomatic, whatever that might be. Now they even technological. Everything together. I think that that's a good question that you asked. So my first question to your cultural dimension of your question is that you must decolonize. There is an illusion among many other people that say, we are independent. I said, so what that you are independent? You have no cultural independence at all. Your master is still your master in your head. He's your king. How can you tell me that you have independence? That is just a word, just an empty word.
Illusion.
So it's the first step. The same thing in Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa. I was interviewed on TV many times over there. You can watch some of those TV interviews. Okay. I told them the same thing. You must decolonize your identity. Now, how are you going to do that? In what way? I cannot tell you what to do. You have to decide because each country has their own cultural specifics that you have to consider. But from the scholarly perspective, I can see that that is a problem that you are raising. There are solutions. So that is a good start. Before I go on to the economic and the political, I'll give you a chance to respond to what I said.
There are many persons who would have echoed to some extent what you said about our so-called independence, because we are seen as a member of the British Commonwealth, of which the British monarch is the head. We find it every day reinforced in the currency that we spend. Now, there are two major currencies, the one that's called Eastern Caribbean, where you find the Queen is still there. That will change eventually because King Charles is now the ultimate monarch. So in our currency, we're told, but we have that currency, this is not yours. You're sharing this, you're a member of the British Commonwealth. So we identify with that. So that mindset that we sometimes boast of independence is an illusion. We're not okay, let's take a country that's stronger economically, one of those in Africa. They pose more of a threat when it comes to changing the status quo than us. We're very, very small. We don't have the economic or even the political will to challenge that status quo. Barbados, you mentioned, is a good example, but it's one of the many. And we don't have that cohesion of purpose to say that we are with her. We are with her, yes, because what she's doing is commendable, working, but it wasn't a concerted discussion that we should follow that example, etc. It's mentioned, but then it's put on the back burner.
Okay.
So the identity crisis we have is we are still under colonialism, even it's called neo-colonialism.
Okay. Now let's move to the second one. I think your feedback now can move into the political dimension, and then we will talk about the economic one. Now, you mentioned about this regional organization. You mentioned about the effort by the Prime Minister in Barbados, yes. and you may be agreeing with her, but you still have the regional concern. That is a good example. I was also interviewed in your neighbor, Dominica, for example, I think last week, and you can watch the TV interviews. And some of the questions also raised in the sense that they asked me, Dominica is a small country. By the way, you are even smaller than they are.
Yes, we are.
So they face the problem of how to resolve some of the problems confronting Dominica. I can say the same thing to you. One of the answers that I had to their question in Dominica can be used over here too, is that because you are so small, you only have 50,000 or whatever, 60,000 by now. That is very small as comparison by, let's say, 1.4 billion in China or India, or 330 millions, for example, in the US or elsewhere. Yeah. So you are so tiny that it's difficult for you to do anything which requires some major effort because that's just too small. So you have to work together with your neighbors, including Barbados and some other Caribbean islands. Now, there's some disagreement about that. That is okay. You don't have a lot of other alternatives. You are also a member of some of the other regional organizations.
CARICOM.
Yes,
Yep.
and you can use that too. So you have to work together with them, not just on climate change, but also on many of the regional issues, including this one. I think that there's some hope for that. But at the end of the day,
As a political solution?
size does matter, by the way, even though I was trying to be a bit more supportive when I said that she said size doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you still have to face the realistic dilemma that size does matter a lot in international
The grand scale scheme of things.
But when she said that size doesn't matter, she was trying to be inspirational. She's trying to say, in spite of that, we still want to. I don't mind about that, but I'm also a realistic person. So inspirational is one thing. Realistic is another thing that you also have to espouse. Otherwise, your inspiration will fail because you don't look into the reality. So that is a major dilemma. So politically, and then we can go into the economic because all of these are
intertwined.
Yes.
Interrelated.
Yeah. Another thing that you can do is that the world that we live in has changed. In one of my books, I have written more than 180, but one of them is called Beyond the World of Titans and the Remaking of World Order.
Beyond the World of Titans.
Yes.
Okay.
And I made a prediction. It turns out to be quite true now, more than maybe 20 years ago, is that we are shifting to a new international order where the Western powers will not be in charge anymore. It will be the Asian one. I was talking about especially China and India. China is already a superpower. India is coming up. But this book, by the way, was written about 20 years ago. I remember at that time when I gave a presentation, everyone looked at me and say, where are you from? Are you lunatic or something? Can you just look at the reality? 20 years ago, nothing was like that. It's still a very much unipolar moment at that time, as you can imagine. But now it turned out to be true that in my first book, The Future of Human Civilization, I finished that in the 1990s. At that time, I made the first prediction that China, together with other Asian countries, will be the dominant ones in the coming century. But at that time,
Quick question.
Yes.
What were the indicators to you at that time that inspired the book? Because it's not been revealed today. But from your perspective back then, what were the indicators?
Because my educational background and my intellectual preparation is very different from a normal person. When I was younger, I said to myself, instead of to hurry myself up, finish my education and try to do something else, let me have a solid foundation first on the intellectual level. So at that time, I say, I must master a lot of disciplines. Not just that's why I have more than 5 degrees, but I say I need to read all of this literature. I end up in a massive endeavor day and night. I sit in the library, I sit at home, I did not do anything else. For years, I have been doing like this. I read about every single thing to read in the social sciences, in the natural sciences, in the humanities, in the formal sciences. I read everything, cosmology, mathematics, everything topic. I'm saying I'm going to integrate all of them. I'm going to engage in intellectual endeavor that no one in human history has done before. So I started this when I was still young and say, I need to have a new foundation that no one had done before. And I spent so many years preparing. By the time I finished my PhD, I have already read so much thing about everything else. And when I was working on my PhD, I'm talking about my doctoral dissertation. Read that dissertation. It was about every single topic it is in literature. My advisor told me that I had never seen a dissertation which has been written with so many sources on so many things and trying to incorporate all of them together in a giant prediction of the human future. That's why you asked me about what are the indicators. I look into many of these dimensions and I come to realize the future is no longer in the West. It will be in the East. That is a shock. By the way, the answer is also in my book that you can read, but I'm trying to answer your question very briefly.
That theory has been out there for some time based on the global trends. But I'm saying, being from a professional point of view, intellectual point of view, having written that particular book over 20 years ago, it would be just interesting to see what were the indicators to you, because you have been proven to be correct.
Yeah. For example, the economic indicator is a good example. I mentioned, for example, that if you look at the economic indicator, China will engage in a long period of high economic growth, higher than, let's say, the Western powers. But it turns out to be true. I also make the prediction that, of course, this cannot last forever. No economy can have a high growth rate forever, 1 trillion years. It doesn't work out like that. We're all humans. So we have to use human time, not cosmic time. But even then, even in terms of human time, that is, in economics, we have the compounding effect. When you grow faster than someone else, even by a few percentage points, after 10 years and 30 years, it will be translated into several times larger than the other one. So that is one of the good examples. Now, there's one indicator. The other one is the political one. Contrary to what other people thought at that time, I also said that the Chinese political system was misunderstood in the West. In many ways, they are much more...
Was that by design?
But both by design and also by ideology and by politics, whatever that might be. Remember, international communication, even in international education, is not free of propaganda. You go to school, there are always a lot of propaganda, even in academia. And I have been in those places for a long time, and I know that.
Okay. But I have something to add to why I thought that China would emerge as a world power. I believe China had a 100-year program, policy of development, whereas in America, you find every year, every 4 years, there's a change of administration. So there's no consistent policy. You've gone from the Democrats to the Republican, and there's an interruption. Whereas in China, except for some ideology changes, you have that one consistent commitment. A 100-year plan, and I figured that was one of the factors that catapult China as a global power over the Western world. But that was just one of my concepts of thinking why that would be. You are the person who will spend decades studying this, and you're better poised to inform us as to how things turn out to be. But you were saying when I interrupted you, where were you? What point were you when I interrupted you?
No, I was talking about trying to tell you about the political indicator.
Yeah,
you asked me what are the indicators that I use when I made the prediction more than 1990 something. We are talking about more than 30 years ago. How could I? Because as a visionary, my job is to make prediction. I always use a lot of. So when I look into any prediction, unlike many other people in human history, I don't just focus on one thing, which is my passion. Let's say Jesus Christ is more about the religious matter. Sigmund Freud is more about psychoanalysis. Karl Marx is about class struggle. Everyone is giving you an angle of observation and use the angle to analyze everything. Now that will not work. And I said to myself when I was a student at that time, I said, look, I'm not going to repeat the same mistakes that all the so-called great thinkers have done in the past. That's why I just said, more than when I was a student, I said to myself, I'm going to read all of the literature that I can put my hand on. I read all of them. I'm going to incorporate all of them. And I want to see what exactly will the future hold if I incorporate all of this. But when I look into all this different data from different angles of observation, and I can see that many of the indicators are pointing to China. And next, India too. So, but many of the same indicators are pointing to the Western powers in the negative direction. And that's how I came to realize that things are not working well in the West. But at that time,
sustainable.
When you spoke like this, you do not remember how I went through in the U.S. at that time. Everywhere I went, I gave a presentation. People look at me, sometimes shout at me, scream at me, think that you are not, you are whatever name that they can call me.
Yep. Because you know what? You're not speaking. You're not supporting their narrative.
Yes, and that's how I learned that new ideas, not just I read from book, new ideas always face persecution in history. There are different ways for them to suppress you, silence you, oppress you. For example, in my case, because at that time I was only like a student, I have no money, no power, no family connection, everything. They don't need to kill me, but they just ignore me as someone who is just like an idiot. Okay, that's fine. But the point that I learned is that in my first few years of my academic progression, that this is something that you have to pay for. Now, back to your other question about the political one. This is something that, in this case, China has been misunderstood in the West. To understand this, you ask, is that by design or is that by ideology? Why am I saying a combination of them? Because the West has dominated international politics since the colonial era, especially in the last 200 years. Okay, and because of that, the West gets used to this kind of complacency that that system must be superior to everyone else. And that's why since 1945, for example, the rule-based international order is based on international orders designed, constructed, dominated by the West. And Western power do not want to let go, even now. In fact, I have written some recent article to say that they are fighting for their own last days, because you can see that Trump, in a way, why did he say to make America great again? Why did he just say to make America great? Because America is no longer great. He tried to say, we want to make that great again. It's not great anymore, but I want to do that again. Just I say, vote for me in St. Kitts. I'm going to make St. Kitts great, but no one is going to say, you make St. Kitts great again because you have never been great, right? So,
interesting perspective.
So the political system in China, in many ways, are much more effective, much less corrupt, much freer, much more humanitarian than the Western ones. When I say something like that in my publication or in my presentation, people look at me and say, you do not look into data. And I say, yes, I did, but you did not. Let me give you some examples. In China, you have freedom from homelessness. In America, you have a lot of homeless people. If you go to California, there's a district in Los Angeles. We call that Skid Row. You can look at that.
I know about it.
Yeah.
I know about it. I've actually seen it.
Neighborhood after neighborhood, there are homeless people. In China, that's unthinkable. Now, this is a question about human rights because it's a freedom from homelessness. In America, every day you watch the news. This morning, someone gets shot. In fact, last night, a school kid just shot four or five, whatever, and then his father, and then he was arrested.
His father bought him the gun.
I said, okay, this is just one example. I'm not going to talk about that case. I just give you one example to show you what I mean. In China, it's almost unheard of. Sometimes they do, but that's very unheard of. That's called freedom from violence. You're a woman. You work at night in the subway, in downtown in New York or in Paris or in Rome. Can you imagine the risk that you are going to encounter? In China, it's safe. Now, it is a question from violence, freedom from violence, freedom from security. Now, we talk about corruption. We often point to other countries that they are corrupt, they are dictatorship. Things in the U.S. are not like that. No, on the contrary, if you are black in America, you will face a lot of police brutality. Okay, there is a problem here. Why not talk about this now? The U.S. spent a lot of money, more than 10 other military powers combined together in terms of military budget.
On the military, yeah.
The U.S. military budget is more than the next top 10 military powers on earth combined together. Why? That's why the U.S. engaged in a lot of endless wars, because it benefits the U.S. defense companies a lot.
That is correct.
It is more like a business operation over here. Now, why do you not spend the same money on infrastructure, education, healthcare, homelessness, or many of food and all that? The U.S. have a lot of this problem. Now, by contrast, China has spent so much money on this. That's why you go to China now. China are far ahead of the U.S. in infrastructure, even in education, in healthcare. See that? And
I have a friend who's currently in China. She's from Antigua.
Yeah.
She's also an author. And one of the things she shared with me, how impressed she is because she's still there, with the cleanliness the orderliness of the society. Right? I've seen that in other. I went to Toronto some years ago, directly from New York, and the contrast was so in terms of the cleanliness. But she's now in China, and she called me a few times, let me know how clean. She's been to the Great Wall, she's been to Tiananmen Square, she's there, And so that order, that sense of orderliness and the pride in society. She speak about the garbage collection, how it's done, and very, very impressed with it. So apart from what she told me, I have known for some time that culture in China is all about a sense of pride in seeing your country clean, in making sure. So the crime that you mentioned that is not happening there is a result of the mindset of the people. Do we have a call? Good day, caller. You're live on Voices. Any question for the doc?
Hello?
Yes, you're live on Voices.
Yes. Good day to everybody, including to your host. Yes, God's blessings to everybody. Now, what I would like to say is that, you see, one of the biggest reasons why China has become a great economic power today is because certain provinces in China has been designated as economic zones for freedom of trade. You open your business, your own businesses, private businesses. As a matter of fact, it is said it is easier to open a business on the streets of Shanghai than in America. So those zones have less government regulations when it comes to and those sort of stuff. Yes, and so in those economic zones, where that has been moved more in the direction of free market capitalism, more in that direction, has been the main economic driving power behind China's economic growth and rise and that sort of stuff. And this thing started back when I think Chairman Mao had privatized agriculture to a certain extent. And then in doing so, agriculture took off economically. So, it goes even way back to then. And like I said, some provinces become economic zones where they move closer to free market capitalism and that sort of stuff. So these things has been among the powerful economic growth of China today. And this is something for that people need to learn.
Okay. Thank you very much for that contribution. Doc?
Thank you.
Yes, I spent 1 year in China as a U.S. Fulbright scholar. I won
Fulbright.
Yes, I won the national competition and for the scholarship, and I went into China in 1993 and 1994 because my scholarship allowed me to 1 year, 10 months. I appreciate what the gentleman said. I saw some of this firsthand because at that time China was still opening up. I remember many other things were so behind that it was very funny. When I went to Guangzhou, let's say the Guangdong province, which is next next to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is inside China, by the way. At the time, people in Hong Kong, they're all Chinese, by the way. They speak the same language. They speak Cantonese. Even inside China, the Guangdong province, they are the same people. At that time, the Chinese in Hong Kong, they looked down on the Chinese in Guangdong province because at that time China was opening up. And many of the Chinese coming from the rural areas, the agricultural areas, and many of them did not even know some basic things about how to engage in business. I mean, they are very behind. Now, 10 years later, 20 years later, now more and more Hong Kong people go to Guangzhou and work. And that is the opportunity for them. Instead of looking at that time, Hong Kong was about 18% of the total GDP of China. Now it's less than 1%. Now and Hong Kong become more and more dependent on China. Many of these people, they look down on the Chinese in Hong Kong now, go to Guangdong province and work and live there and say how amazing, how advanced. You go to Shenzhen, by the way, it's just amazing. Many of the things happening in the south of China now is even much more advanced than those in Hong Kong. You see the economic transformation. This says something also about politics. One of the things that I said in my publication, at that time no one listened to me, is that the West did not understand China because of this mindset, the colonial legacy that I told you in the last 200 years. Now, I forgive them because when you are dominant in international affairs for 200 years or more, you must be very arrogant, right?
Yes.
I mean, you get used to it. You are entitled to it. The Europeans...
There's that sense of entitlement that they have, yes.
They think that they are the best and they are the superior one. You are the inferior one. You are uncivilized. You are backward. They must lecture you. They are preaching. Look at the EU right now.
That's actually taught in school.
Yes, and also taught in school too. So now, I find, by the way, the same thing happened in Chinese Empire in the 19th century. They looked down on the Europeans. When the UK came to China in the 19th century, asked for trade, the Chinese emperor told the British emperor and say, we don't need you. We have everything. Why do you need someone like you from your barbarians? The Europeans for the Chinese are barbarians at that time. Now, of course, they collapsed at that time. So the same mindset again. So this prevents them from being competitive because they don't catch up, because over time this mindset is eating you up. You become complacent. You don't look at your rivals anymore. This is exactly what happened, that many American companies are losing now in international competitiveness because they ignore the Chinese. They don't take them seriously. Whatever they do, they always say they just copy and steal technology from us. The problem is that China technology now is much more advanced than American technology. Look at Huawei. Why do you think Trump was so afraid of Huawei? Because Huawei was much more advanced than the US. They have 5G.
To ban it in the US market.
And now they have 5.5G. Now they are going to 6G. The US is still behind in 4G. And to make things worse, Trump and Biden now and trying to kick out all the Chinese companies so that the U.S. now is behind. They don't want to buy all this 5G or 6G or whatever.
And now that also gives China an
advantage, opportunity. Yes,
a technical advantage.
Now, just in case all this is just my view, let me give you a data. The British journal, a well-known one, a mainstream journal and magazine that's called The Economist. You heard about that?
I know The Economist, yes.
They just published a new survey, a new research report. They say that China now is the top science superpower. Read the article. They just came out I think 2 weeks ago. They said China is now the top science superpower. They surpasses the US and the West in 40-something out of 53-something top high-tech sectors. They surpasses the US. Think about it. Think about the ship.
The US space, the satellites.
Yes. Just in case you misheard me, because you asked this question, we are not talking about ordinary high-tech. We are talking about the most advanced high-tech, the high-tech sectors which will dominate future civilization for the next few decades to come. They identify 50-something sectors, including chip making, satellite engineering, space exploration, biotechnology, quantum computing. I mean, we're talking about high tech. We're not talking about the little thing about how to make coffee. We're not talking about this. We're talking about the high tech sector among the advanced countries. Okay, they will dictate the future.
Who controls the technology? Controls the world.
Exactly. That is what the magazine is going to say. Now, the magazine is published by the British, so they are not for the Chinese in mind. They want to tell the Western world, wake up, we need to catch up before it's too late. They do this not because they want to praise China, because they want the US and the West to catch up. It's getting late. We've become so complacent. They are surpassing the US and the West in many 40 something out of 50 something, I don't know, like 47 out of 53 or whatever the exact number is. Now, just in case you think it's just a single person opinion, another indicator last week.
Okay.
From
I think we have
Australia,
a call.
the same thing.
Okay, I think we have a call. Good day, caller. You're live on Voices.
Yes, Socrates, I just want to say something else quickly. The gentleman spoke about colonialism earlier, and we need to get under colonialism. When the last government was in, people was talking often about us, we should become a republic. I even think we should even get out of the Commonwealth. And quite honestly, I think the UN too. But one step at a time. Definitely we need to get out of the Commonwealth as well. But that bring up the issue about us that we need to at least begin by becoming a republic.
Much
And not be
appreciated.
afraid of Washington coming in to invade us.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Chairman, just all yours, sir.
What the gentleman said, I think that's a good point too. At least some of the local people become conscious of this problem. I mean, that is the almost half of the solution solved, because if you are not even aware that there's a problem, now that's very dangerous.
There's no problem.
But at least you're aware that there's a problem and you need to fix that problem. Now, that is already a very, very good start. So the colonialization of your identity is certainly a very important first step. Become a republic is certainly a big thing, because it may be symbolic, but that symbolicness it has so much to do with your spirituality too, because now you are not trying to espouse King the Third as your master anymore. So you are going to eliminate once and for all your colonial legacy, because when you still have him, it's not just him personally, but I'm talking about the symbolic nature of that. You are not getting rid of your colonial independence that you are looking for. So it's just the first step that you have to do. And the other one is the one that you mentioned a while ago, which is also something that I asked in some of the conversation, is your currency. Because as soon as your currency is still under the currency of other major colonial powers, you don't go very far, not only in your economic independence. By the way, it costs money. Number one, you don't have independent economic from monetary policy, because your money is controlled by others. And that's very important for you to grow. No economic power on earth can grow for a long time if their economy, their monetary system is controlled by foreign power. It doesn't work like this. Okay, and secondly, when you use the currency of another country and they produce the currency for you, you have to pay a lot of fees. You have to deposit certain amount of money to them. You have to pay the fees for them to print the money for you. There are certain kind of monetary requirements. All this costs a lot of money to the country, and that's why Western Africa and Central Africa now is getting rid of the French francs as the currency.
But Gaddafi attempted that some years ago.
But he was eliminated.
He was taken out.
That's why I said small powers, you have to be careful, because if you are doing this...
He sees as a threat to the status quo.
Exactly. That's why I said international politics is a question of power. And that's why a lot of powers, why do you think the colonial powers have spent so much money on the military? Why? Because if you don't do it, we are going to come in and crush you. It's not a question that...
They're created for checks, but they will get it done.
It's not a question that let's have a nice dinner together and we have a nice conversation. No, it's a question of do it, man. If you don't, we're going to do it for you. By the way, just in case you do not know, sometimes it backfired. Okay? Let me give you one example. Do you know the Oceania Solomon Islands?
I know of them.
Okay, Solomon Islands, I think it was last year and the year before, they have a security pact with Australia. Australia and New Zealand
They are protectorate.
They are the local colonial powers in that region, by the way. So for many years, Solomon Islands has been under the security umbrella of Australia, which is by translation is under the U.S. And then the Solomon Islands decided to sign a security pact with China to balance out, because they think that they have been dominated too much by Australia and the West. They try to get independent now. Western powers come in and pressure them to stop. Finally, when I do not remember the name of, he is the government official, the prime minister or whoever, the foreign minister, went to Australia. Do you know what the Australian people, the government tell him? Stop, or you will be overthrown. You'll be out of power soon. So now, this backfired, because when the guy came back to Solomon Islands, and they talk about this, I think the head of the government, I do not remember the name, he was very upset. He said, look, that is it. We cannot stand this kind of bully anymore. They have been bullying us like this for many years. We get sick and tired of it. It's time to step up. Even if I get killed, it's time to stand up now. It's getting too much. That is it. So now this case, it backfired now. I don't know how long this guy will be in power. Okay, when would they
Sadly,
before they would take him out?
we're out of time.
So I think that be careful.
It offers us
There's international
a
problems.
chance to continue this discourse perhaps on Monday, if you're still on and you would like to be part of this. I think our listeners and those who are able to view us online would like to hear so much more from you. But we just had just about 50 minutes or so today, and we are out of time. So I want to say to our viewers and listeners, thank you for being part of this program. To you, Dr. Peter Baofu, I think I'm mispronouncing your name. I want to thank you for coming to the program and speaking to us, to the region, because we actually seen globally. We actually covered globally. And if the opportunity arises, I would like for you for Monday my program is Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 11 to 12:30. You came at 12:30 today or after, and we haven't even scratched the surface, I believe, of what you'd like to discuss with us. So if you want to say a quick word to those viewing and listening, you can do a quick wrap-up, and then perhaps we could continue on Monday.
We can continue on Monday.
Right. So if you want to talk to, you had a couple of callers. Very good. Okay. Folks, you're listening. Those of you, we will continue this discourse on Monday. Once again, thank you, Dr. Peter.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.
Well, I was told you'd be here, and I'm so very happy to be part of this experience. Okay. Jamster, thank you very much. And he's looking for the audio and video recording of this. He'll have that. Beautiful. Thank you so very much. Appreciate that.